All right, hi there. I'm going to be talking today about economics and the different economic systems and how they fit into the six core countries that we focus on AP on the AP Comparative Politics course. All right, first off, economics is the branch of knowledge concerned with the production, consumption, and transfer of wealth. So it has to do with money. And if you don't know that or have some sort of vague sense of that, you really should drop out now because it's a little sad. You're not going to do well. Okay, the basic states of economics. We usually think of it in terms of capitalism and communism. Capitalism is a laissez-faire economy. It's a free market economy. There's little to no government involvement. Generally, the United States tends to sort of go along this route, or at least tries to. We have a mixed economy, which is a combination of capitalism and communism. Communism, on the other hand, the government has very strict control over the economy and the people, and it basically just controls the prices and the production. So it says, like, okay, we want to have 50 million toothbrushes made, and then 50 million toothbrushes are made, no more, no less. And if there's like 60 million people in the country, then sucks to be that last 10 million. It's usually confused with socialism, which is this idea that people should be compensated for their work and have access to basic necessities. But the idea in socialism is that the government does not have total control over every aspect of a citizen's life. So you can think of communism as sort of the whole economic part of socialism, that whole economic idea, but it has a totalitarian government. Um, and communism was founded, like first written about by Karl Marx, and it was added to by Lenin, not Beatles Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, pretty cool guy too. And this communist idea, it deals with this whole idea of the inequality inherent in social class. Um, and the idea is that the proletariat, which is the industrial workers, will rise up against the bourgeois, which is the educated people of the country, and they'll overthrow the government and create a revolution, which will involve no private ownership, no religion, which was considered the opiate of the masses, quote by Karl Marx. And then eventually the government will be abolished and everyone will live peacefully. And this hasn't actually happened yet because people are people. But that's, in theory, what communism is all about. And now we have a snazzy little graphic for you. First, you have a spectrum. Pretty chill. Then you have an economic system, which is one part of the spectrum. You have capitalism on one side and extreme socialism on the other. And then another part of the spectrum is the political system. And in this spectrum, you have democracy on one side and you have totalitarianism on the other. Communism is the beautiful marriage of totalitarianism and extreme socialism, while capitalism is basically, as we think of it at least, is capitalism and democracy. Another, not actually an economic system, but it's sort of a state of being, is the rentier state, which is a state which derives all, or at least the majority of its revenue, from the rental of indigenous resources from external clients. So that's a kind of big term. Britain, first country, UK, is a capitalist country, and there's a lot of speculation, and it's sort of generally accepted that the reason that Britain never really experienced a dramatic revolution like a lot of other countries around the world was just the fact that they were really chill about everything, and they were like, okay, we'll change things and improve life gradually for people through legislation over the course of multiple years. So people remained content with their lives and didn't really feel the need to have some sort of violent overthrow of the government. Meanwhile, Russia is the home of Leninism and Stalinism, two different forms of communism. Back in Lenin's day, back in the beginning of the Russian Revolution, his followers were called Bolsheviks. They followed this idea of democratic centralism, where all the power is sort of concentrated at one focal point of the government, the Communist Party in this case. In 1921, Lenin introduced the new economic plans, NEPs, which allowed for some measure of capitalism, which sounds really counterintuitive, but the idea behind it was that capitalism would give people this motivation to work harder, to improve their own lives, and this would in turn improve standards of living and strengthen the working class, and then in turn would further communism. And maybe it would have worked, but then he died in 1924 and Stalin took over. And Stalin was much more of a totalitarian kind of guy. He was really scary. He killed a lot of people. So Stalinism focuses much more on nationalism and totalitarian rule than Leninism did. And then he died, and there was all that crazy reverberation after that. We don't have time to go over it. So in 1992, Boris Yeltsin introduced shock therapy, which is this rapid switch to rapid switch to capitalism, and it resulted in a lot of corruption, inflation, and economic collapse. But the modern economy, it's sort of settled down. It's generally a free market today. China, Maoism. It's another form of communism. Yay, more communism. And Mao was this guy who really emphasized the peasants over the proletariat. He thought that they had the right way of thinking, and everyone should be more like the agrarian peasants. He did recognize the importance of industrialization, though. The great leap forward. He worked to improve industry in China, and he did that by having a lot of like iron drives. People had to bring all of their metal in their town, and it was a really big like group effort kind of thing, which was kind of cool that he could do that, but a little scary. There was a big emphasis on egalitarianism, and he sent urban people, educated people, to live in small villages to learn from the locals during the Cultural Revolution. He really had a personality cult. Like everyone just sort of like followed him. Like Maoism was Mao, and it really sort of didn't survive without him. He died in 1976, and Deng Xiaoping took over for him. And under Deng Xiaoping, China began to move towards a market economy, although he did claim that all of his economic changes and new policies were in line with Maoism. Okay, Mexico. Capitalist country. If it wasn't, America probably would have invaded it, let's be honest. Oil is a major export, but it's definitely not a rentier state because only about 7% of its earnings come from oil. It has experienced a lot of really extreme economic turbulence, but this is really more due to political disturbance than any sort of economic policies that it has. All right. Iran, the White Revolution, was an effort by the Shahs to prevent the spread of communism. Currently, it's a capitalist state. Khomeini, the former supreme leader, actually once declared that economics is for donkeys. And he stressed the spiritual over the material. Today, it's not quite so extreme. Because of the strong authoritarian government, the economy does have some socialist tendencies, mixed economy. But Islam does allow private property, so people are obviously allowed to own private property. Previously, it was a rentier state with 80% of the revenue from oil, but it's sort of beginning to even out and fix itself with there. Nigeria today is very, very much a rentier state. 90 to 95% of its revenue does come from oil, and it is a capitalist country, although the state does control a lot of the revenue that comes in from the sale of the oil. And yeah, that's the economic stuff, hopefully. Okay, good luck on the exam.